Hello everyone, this is part 23 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. There were certain, unavoidable facts that everyone had to accept. For Uzumaki Naruto, it was the fact that he needed to re-enter the village proper and buy a new jacket. His old one was shredded. Patched, but shredded. Also, he was hungry, and, really, his training was now, by all accounts, to the point that he could do it as he went about his business. Hence, his total concentration on the balloon in his hand as he strolled down the street, unaware of the attention he was gaining. Not that it would have mattered to him, Naruto was used to attention. Of course, that was the attention of a troublemaker or an enemy plant. The attention he was currently receiving was just a step beneath hero worship. Thankfully, Naruto was, indeed, oblivious to this. For the moment, at least. He was doing pretty well, or at least he felt like he was. So far, he had managed to keep this balloon from popping. He didn't even want to think about how many others he'd wasted since Erosenin had left yesterday. Plus, he had learned something pretty impressive. Once he got the bubble of chakra formed around the swirling chaos, he could maintain it with one hand, for a few seconds, at least. This was proven a moment later as he finally removed his hand and attempted to keep it working with one hand. It lasted for a full 10 seconds before it went pop, fluttering his clothes and rocking a few hanging signs. Sighing, he pocketed the broken balloon and produced a new one, resuming his training, before a hand landed on his shoulder. Jerking, Naruto turned, ready to fight. Instead, he was brought up short by Kakashi, who had his infamous red book in hand and open. "Just the ninja I wanted to see," Kakashi said, his eye curving upward happily. Why? Well, first, to congratulate you on becoming a chunin." "Wait, what?" Naruto interrupted, eyes wide, and the balloon in his hands trembling as he lost focus. "Didn't anyone tell you?" Kakashi asked as his eye drooped. "You were promoted to chunin. There weren't very many of you this time, Aro." "I'm a chunin," Naruto shouted, his balloon exploding forcefully. The blonde ignored that and was now jumping around, screaming and causing all sort of havoc in the street. He couldn't believe it. He had made it. He was a chunin now, and that meant he was officially one step closer to being Hokage. Halfway through his celebration and plans for a gorging on ramen, he realized that nobody had bothered telling him about this before now. Stopping, he looked at the white-haired man, frowning with narrowed eyes. "Oi, how long have I been a chunin?" A while now," Kakashi admitted, looking up from his little red book. "Is something wrong?" Naruto, however, shook his head, keeping his face neutral. Internally, however, he was ranting and raving and, most importantly, plotting his payback. Someone should have told him. He could overlook Kakashi and Jiraiya merely because they had things to do with keeping the village functioning, but Ino and Shino. Oh, they were so going to get it, and Anko was definitely going to regret not telling him. "Well, anyway," Kakashi continued, his eye curving upward once more. "Congratulations on the promotion. As for the other reason I wanted to see you, I learned from Anko that your apartment was the one destroyed in the battle with Gaara." "Yeah," Naruto said with a scowl, turning his mind toward that problem. "All my stuff and everything. Well, Anko managed to get a few things out, and I arranged to have them put someplace interesting." Kakashi paused, putting his book up. "It's sort of a reward for saving the village." "Really?" Naruto managed, eyes lighting up. He was getting a reward for saving the village. Probably some new apartment, which would be great. "Yep, just follow me," Kakashi said before taking off at a casual pace. Naruto quickly followed, mind churning as he searched his pockets before blowing up yet another balloon. That done, he began concentrating yet again, picking up the pace as Kakashi did. Several minutes later, Naruto was beginning to appreciate just how big Konoha actually was. They had passed through the more upscale areas, then through the marketplace, before finally entering a section that seemed to be nothing but forest. Then, finally, they exited that and came to a section of the village that was pleasant. No sign of ninja. No sign of any hostility, actually. Each home was a two-story deal, a blend between traditional and modern. Same basic layout, from what Naruto could tell, the picture-perfect neighborhood. Hell, the people were going about their daily lives with smiles on their faces, not even caring that there were two ninja strolling down the street. Not many ninja come through here, Kakashi explained. This used to be Anbu housing, where families of Anbu members lived. Eventually, we moved them out, and regular villagers moved in. They have their own community and very rarely venture into the main areas of Konoha. Oi, it seems different here, Naruto said, looking around, surprised to find a group of girls his age watching his progress with the sort of interest he normally associated with Sasuke fangirls. Well, of course it does, Kakashi said. These are all civilians, Naruto, they don't know much of anything that goes on in the rest of Konoha, and they're not overly interested in hearing about it. They want nice, simple lives, which most ninja find utterly boring. Oh, Naruto said, glancing to his left, where he found a small child playing with a dog. So, there's some place I can stay. Yeah, used to be a kind of lookout station against Iwa back during the last ninja war. It was abandoned a little after that war ended, outdated, really. It's where I had your stuff put, only available location. Without further ado, they came to a stop just on the outside of the neighborhood they had been traveling through, which meant they were facing the side of the smaller mountain and were surrounded by several trees. Turning back, Naruto could still make out the villages as they went about their lives. Okay, Naruto said, looking around carefully. I don't see any place I can stay. Kakashi, however, merely pointed his finger skyward. Naruto blinked, then craned his end to see what the masked man had to show him, and he nearly toppled over. Maybe 20 feet overhead was a round, two-story building, topped with a conical roof. It was suspended in the air by 4 slanted beams that ran from the mountain to the underside of the building. Wah! Naruto managed, taking a step back to try and get a better view of the building. The entire top floor was designed to serve as a training area. The bottom floor is mostly living space, plenty of room. Okay, Naruto said slowly as he glanced at the masked man. And you're just going to let me live here? Yes, Kakashi said simply. Why? Because you sorta own it, Kakashi chuckled. Sensei, the Yondaime, bought it shortly after the war and did some renovations to make it livable. He liked the peace living here among the villagers gave him. It was his fortress of solitude, I guess. And, I own it, Naruto repeated blankly, knowing that he was missing something obvious. You didn't just give away houses, especially not this type of place. Well, I figure better you than someone else. Besides, I never come out here, Kakashi said, handing over the keys and the deed. Just be careful, the Sandaime didn't remove some things for security reasons. There's no telling what you'll find in there. Naruto nodded, then looked up at the building, overwhelmed with the knowledge of owning it. Not only a building, but of own his family's house. He had inherited something, which was just freaky for an orphan. And then, Naruto's mind stumbled across a rather disturbing problem. Oi, how the hell do I get up there? Shunshin. Listening to the ticking clock, Ino sighed and glanced at her mom, who was busy fussing over the flowers. For a while, right after the Chunin exams, things had been busy, but now it was painfully boring. Rolling her eyes, utterly bored, Ino turned back to her notebook and the notes it contained. Studying her handwriting, along with Sakura's notes, Ino mused over the explanation for the Shuoshoku Kaite silently. Since her Shintention had improved, thanks to her father finally walking her through the finer points, she didn't feel guilty about looking at the Genjutsu. Secretly, Ino even felt that she was close to being able to perform the Shinranshin, but she wasn't going to push it too much. Scratching the back of her hand, Ino nodded to herself. The concept was easy enough, maybe she should try it. Remembering her father's warning about not using it until she had more practice with the others, Ino decided trying it in the family shop would not be a good idea. Besides, she wanted to let her arm heal completely so she could work it into her training routine along with Kenjutsu. Her fingers twitched just thinking about the Kodaki that had been delivered to her a few days ago. The old man, Kawakami Musashi, had told her that Hayate had special ordered it for her. Tsukiha, Ino murmured fondly, seeing the crane handguard and the reversed handle as clearly as ever. Added to her anxiousness to resume her training with the scrolls that Yugao had dropped off a day after she had received her sword. Ino had read the first one and knew that the others contained further knowledge of his kenjutsu, a kenjutsu that he now left in her hands. Hayate had given her so much, helped her find her own path, and there was a dull throb as she realized he was gone. Startled out of her thoughts about the blade and her former sensei by the sound of a jingling bell, she grumbled. Looking up, ready to greet the new customer, she froze, discovering one Uzumaki Naruto standing in the doorway. He was looking around curiously, a balloon in his hand, a grin on his face, and wearing a tattered jacket. It struck Ino as odd that, after not seeing him for nearly a month, he should just wander into her flower shop. Oi, Ino-chan, Naruto said, starting toward her, his grin growing. Ha, Ino, you know him? Her mom asked, pausing in watering the flowers to watch the boy curiously. Yeah, Ino said, blinking. Naruto-kun, where have you been? The whole village has been crazy trying to find you and stuff, plus you just left without telling us anything. Anko-sensei wouldn't even tell us, either. Just had us training every morning. Oi, I was training, too. Naruto said happily, holding his balloon up. See. Ino stared at the balloon blankly, but decided to take his word for it. Wait, so this is the Naruto I've heard about? Her mother asked brightly, and Ino saw the look in her eyes. Well, since he turned up, I'm sure he won't mind helping Inoki out in back. Ha, Naruto blinked, obviously trying to figure out how that worked. Just go on back, dear, her mom said, shoving the blonde from behind so that he stumbled past the counter and into the hallway connecting to the back room. Mom, Ino hissed, glaring at the now bemused woman, who was tapping her finger against her cheek. What are you doing? Nothing, her mom said defensively, despite a knowing glint in her eye. You are bored here, right? Maybe you'd like to go out for lunch. Moom, Ino pleaded, almost afraid of what the woman was thinking. He's just my friend. I never said he wasn't. But you're trying to get him and me to go out together for lunch, Ino huffed, stomping a foot. I am doing no such thing, her mom said, grinning as the sounds of shattering glass and curses drifted from the back room. I just asked if you'd like some lunch. Just go. Inoki's voice suddenly shouted, amid more noise of destruction. Oi, but I came to see Ino-chan. Take her with you then. Just get out. Inoki shouted back, a second before Naruto re-emerged without a balloon and looking disgruntled. Oh dear, her mom said, hand on her cheek. Perhaps you two should leave, maybe get some lunch. When Inoki gets like this. Mom, Ino said accusingly, but the older woman merely smiled sweetly. Naruto, utterly clueless to what had transpired, was quickly ushered out the door by a furious Ino. She knew it would be pointless to argue with her mom right then, but this was so not the last of it. Shooting one last, dark glare, at her cheerful mom, Ino stepped outside to join Naruto. Self-consciously adjusting the sling her arm was resting in, Ino sighed. Her mom could be such a pain, sometimes. Honestly, she and Naruto were just friends, teammates. Still, lunch would be nice, and she hadn't seen him for a while, maybe going out for lunch wasn't such a bad idea. So, where should we go eat? Ichiraku. Naruto shouted eagerly, eyes alight. Again, Ino said, staring at him startled. Don't you ever eat anything else? Huh, why? Naruto asked, setting off at a brisk pace. Ramen is the perfect food. Oi. And it has all these toppings. Fried rice, Chinese dumplings, seaweed, kamaboko, green onions, and even corn. Plus miso and pork, which is one of my favorites. Ino felt herself blush slightly at that, though she couldn't think of a reason why. Shaking it off, she grabbed his arm and jerked him to a stop. How about I pick today, okay? I know this place where they serve tea and good salads. Yuck, Naruto said, scrunching his face up. They're not that bad, Ino said with a roll of her eyes. Besides, it'd be good for you to eat something else. Remember, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Oi. But I don't need to get any fonder of it, Naruto said sulkily. Besides, ramen's never hurt me. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the reason you're a midget is, 'cause you never eat anything but ramen? Ino snapped back irritably, then almost winced, realizing what she had said. Oi. And maybe the reason you don't have is, 'cause all you ever eat is vegetables. Naruto snapped back, glaring at her. Ino rounded on him, surprised that he was able to match her glare for glare. Any further argument was short by a loud and horribly familiar voice. Naruto. Ino. Turning, Ino winced as Kiba and Akamaru trotted up, along with Yoban, the village's biggest gossip. Kami, this was not good. That girl would blow this whole situation way out of proportion. Oi, Kiba, Naruto said brightly, apparently clueless as to who the girl was. You two out on a date. He, what can I say? It's animal magnetism. Kiba chuckled, dodging a swipe from girl beside him. I'll have you know, I asked him to help me find my little sister. Yoban said, glancing between them. Speaking of dates. Which this isn't. Ino interjected firmly. We're on the same team. It's not strange for us to hang out together. So, Naruto's still available? Yoban asked, giving him an appraising once-over. Would you like to go get something to eat? Naruto managed, blinking. Well, I was sorta going. Naruto-kun, why don't you go on ahead? That place I was telling about is just down the street, Ino interrupted hastily, knowing the glint in the other girl's eyes. Naruto, royally confused, shrugged and turning started off on his own. What was that about? Kiba asked, almost as confused as the blonde young man. Listen, Kiba, why don't you keep looking around? Yoban said sweetly. Just go, Ino snapped, not looking away from the other girl. Okay, Kiba said, going off on his own, muttering about crazy girls. So, Yoban said slyly. Back off, Ino said curtly. You really don't want to get involved. All of you fangirls make me sick. When he wasn't known for saving the village, none of you wanted anything to do with him, and now. Oh, look who's talking. Yoban said heatedly. You used to fawn all over Sasuke, remember? I'm sure your new boyfriend there is really naive enough to think you've actually changed. Ino paused, feeling as if she had been then narrowed her eyes. First, he's not my boyfriend. Second, when I fawned all over Sasuke, I was a stupid little bee. Unlike you and all these other girls that apparently never got the damn memo to grow up. That said, Ino rounded on her heel and stormed off. That had felt pretty damn good, that was for sure. Picking up the pace, she spotted a confused Naruto, who was surrounded by several giggling girls. Ugh, Ino managed, grinding her teeth as she stormed up and pulled the boy away. Was it too much to ask for a few minutes alone with Naruto? Shaking her head in annoyance, she led the still confused Naruto into the Konoha Tea Avenue. Oi, I didn't know you could see the Hokage Mountain from here, Naruto said brightly, gazing up at the faces. Awesome. Yeah, it's a great view, Ino muttered, dragging the boy into the nearest tea cafe. The place was a bit crowded, but Ino managed to snag them a table. Keeping in mind Naruto and his fixation on the Hokages, she made sure to pick one that they could see the Hokage Mountain from. So, Naruto said, glancing around, then at her. Do I gotta order vegetables? What is your problem with them? Ino asked in exasperation. They're evil, Naruto said heatedly, crossing his arms. Didn't you see the news report where those giant tomatoes went on a rampage and started eating people? Ino blinked, then hurriedly flagged down a waitress. Jasmine tea. And for you? The woman asked, glancing at Naruto, then doing a double take when she realized who she was talking to. I dunno, green tea, I guess. Right, of course. The waitress managed before hurrying off. Oi. So anyway, do I really gotta? Yes, Ino said in exasperation. You do. Now, get over it and look at your menu. Seeing his pout, Ino rolled her eyes and resisted the urge to him upside the head. It wouldn't look good, she told herself. A village hero over his problem with vegetables would not be smart. Besides, at least he was willing to eat something other than ramen for her. That had been nothing short of a miracle, and she knew it. Taking the tea from a nervous waitress a moment later, Ino resigned herself to dealing with that reaction from now on when hanging out with Naruto. Sir, what would you like for lunch? The waitress stammered. Salad, no dressing, Ino ordered, glancing at Naruto curiously. The blonde was scowling as he skimmed the menu before snapping his fingers and grinning. Oi, how about a large vegetarian noodle soup? Naruto said, glancing up at the waitress with a grin. With an extra order of noodles. Oh, of course, the woman said, hurrying off once more. Ino sighed, then rubbed her temples. Well, at least it wasn't ramen. Staring out from the small room adjoining Fugaku's private office over the small garden, which was enclosed by the home's inner wall, Uchiha Mikoto silently waited for the girl to settle in. Hearing the girl finally finish, the Uchiha matriarch turned her attention to the girl, smiling gently to ease her nerves. Uchiha Mikomi was from a distant branch of the family, considered almost a black sheep as Uchiha women went. At 14 she was both pretty and very temperamental, demanding to be treated equal to the male Uchiha members. Mikoto smiled to herself. The girl was a very good choice for the plan the elders had created. The girl was, of course, a Chunin, which meant she was strong. She had also managed to retain a 2-tomo Sharingan, which was very rare for the females of the clan. With her temperament, which from Mikoto's observations seemed the type to attract Naruto, she would be perfect. Mikomi-chan. Thank you, yes, thank you, Mikoto-sama, the younger girl said with a slight bow, obviously pleased and honored to be meeting with her. Mikoto nodded slightly, gesturing for the maid to pour the drinks, and then dismissed her casually. Gesturing gracefully at the steaming cup of tea, Mikoto selected her own. Both women drank silently, Mikomi obviously caught up in the mystery of it all, while Mikoto braced herself to perform this task. These are really lovely cups, so elegant, Mikomi said after a moment, looking at the older woman curiously. May I ask why exactly you sent for me? Mom didn't explain, just that I should come here immediately. Ah, yes, the reason I called you here, Mikoto said, with a prolonged pause. Before that, however, perhaps you could tell me what you think of Uzumaki Naruto. Oh, him, the girl said, her tone suddenly interested. Well, he's strong for a non-Uchiha obviously, and rumor has it he's very loyal. Oko, Mikoto said with a small grin, knowing that loyalty was a strong selling point even among the females of the clan. Several girls have developed a crush on him, well. Mikomi paused, blushing slightly. Don't feel guilty, that is actually a good thing, Mikoto said, sighing as she set her teacup down. The clan has decided we would like to bring the Uzumaki into the fold. He has a Unshui condition that could prove useful if mixed with our own, and as such we are searching for the proper girl for this task. Proper girl, Mikomi echoed, then looked shocked. Are you wish to arrange a marriage between him and myself? Well, not as such, seeing as he has no clan to deal with. Mikoto clarified, noting the girl's sudden relief. All we require at the moment is that you seek to develop a relationship with him. Of course there are now other girls from the various clans that will be vying for his attention, though from what we can tell you only need concern yourself with the Yamanaka girl. I see. Mikomi murmured, sounding unsure and looking at the cup of tea, gulped audibly. What if I refuse? I mean, not that he couldn't be interesting to date, but well. I don't like being used as an object. I'm a human being after all, it should be my decision. I agree, the Uchiha matriarch said seriously. If it were my decision I would of course, leave it to you. However, it is not my decision, I have been ordered to find a suitable girl for this task. Therefore I must order you to begin this task, however I can give you time to consider the task. So, if I decide to say no, I don't have to do it. I believe that is what I said, Mikoto said, raising an eyebrow. However, why should you say no? Do you distrust the wisdom of our elders? Or of my husband? And no, of course not. Perhaps you doubt my judgment. That's not it, Mikomi said, waving her hands before her. It's just that, being ordered to do this makes me feel like an animal. I'm a human being, my own person, it's hard to accept this, Mikoto-sama. That's all, if I could have time to think, a day. Very well, Mikoto allowed, nodding slightly. You have until tomorrow to make your decision. If yes, then you apply yourself with all of your cunning. If no, then, we will see what happens. Hi. Noga followed Hyan along the corridor, feeling confident despite his gloved hand. The air was cool, almost damp, and it reminded him of the rains. It had been a week since Hitori had called him to the capital, and after numerous cancelled meetings, Noga was finally going to speak with his brother. Turning his mind away from such thoughts, he mused about his mother's mysterious disappearance. She had been so pleased with his initiative, and with how nicely he had handled all the small details that had come up. Her disappearance yesterday had thrown him into disarray, but he hadn't had time to send searchers out. They turned another corner and, unexpectedly, Hien opened an iron-bound, reinforced door and led the way up to the inner room. Noting the samurai and ninja, Noga felt slightly nervous, but marked it off as nothing more than nerves. Crossing the inner room quietly, he braced himself as Hien opened the last door and ushered him inside. The room was exactly as he remembered it. Dotting the walls were wall hangings depicting the standard half-crescent green and black symbol of the Kusa Daimyo. At the far end of the office sat an ancient wooden desk, and behind it rested a massive chair that was more like a throne than anything else. Eyes sweeping the room, he found his brother standing before a rack of scrolls, hands clasped behind his back. Noga smirked to himself. His brother had always been interested in reading and learning. Moving as if to join the man, he froze as Hitori spoke. Ah, Noga-nisan. It's a pleasure to see you. I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting. Regent Sama, Noga said carefully, aware of the danger he was now in. His brother was never that polite unless he was angry, and when Hitori got angry he became as treacherous as a cobra. Oh, no need for formalities, Hitori said, smiling fondly as he turned to face Noga. After all, we are brothers, correct? Yes, of course, Noga agreed, watching the man like a hawk. Ah, where are my manners? Hitori said pleasantly, ringing a small bell. A moment later an unnoticeable inner door on the left opened, allowing a young woman to enter. Noga did a double take. She was very attractive, with long brown hair and blue eyes. Her lips were highlighted seductively with red, and she wore, of all things, a kimono that was far too small and revealed a fading cloud anbu tattoo on the visible part of her bi. Ah, Sazu-chan. Noga-nisan, this my lady, Sazuko, Hitori said conversationally as the woman slinked into the room, carrying a tray of tea. Sazu-chan, this is Noga-nisan, who has helped me immeasurably. Hello, Sazuko said in a rather shy fashion as she began pouring the tea for them. Finished, she flashed Noga a flirtatious smile and then, turning, slipped out of the room. Noga stared after her, as if hypnotized and then, snapping out of it, focused once more on Hitori. The regent smiled and politely offered Noga the first cup of tea, which was the proper thing to do. Noga wisely declined, then watched with rapt attention as Hitori drank. Seeing no treachery there, the ninja carefully collected the second cup and took a sip. So, maybe you are wondering why I brought you in today, Hitori said after a moment before moving around his desk to sit down and lace his fingers together on the surface. Well, it would be a very wise thing to wonder. I trust you, Noga said, preparing for the treachery in store. Oh, I have no doubt about that, Hitori agreed lightly, smiling. Yes, I, too, trust you. For instance, I trust that you were not manipulated into wasting my carefully laid plans. I trust that you understand just how dangerous it is in these times, which also means I trust you understand why I've placed your revered mother under my personal protection. Noga stiffened, staring at his brother calculatingly. She is where? Safely tucked away in one of my private homes, Hitori said, nodding. After all, if our father, the daimyo, could be betrayed by his own ninja. I thought the rain. Oh, didn't you hear? The rain were aided by the Kusa Susui, who, of course, has now been Hitori said seriously, eyes darkening. Betrayal must receive its just reward, after all, and soon, Rain will know the price for this unprovoker of our father. Hitori, Noga said slowly, wondering at this act. You do know that I acted in the best interests of our country, Hitori said curtly. Oh yes, I know all about you rushing my plans. I understand very clearly, brother, why you decided to act when you acted. However, it is easily handled, and, in the end, we achieved the same results. Of course, Noga said uneasily. Now, onto why I wanted to see you today, Hitori said, producing a scroll. This is an order, one that you must bear to Kusa, appointing a new Susui and new procedures I have in mind to ensure another such betrayal will never occur. Noga nodded silently, thankful for being allowed to live, then took the scroll. Hitori smiled politely and then produced another scroll. This scroll contains your new assignment. You'll be going west to a hidden base where I have a new force gathering. Once there, you'll receive further orders. Anything else? Noga asked as he took the second scroll and rose. Just one more thing, Hitori said without standing or allowing his pleasant attitude to slip. If you ever act as you did in such a way as you have previously, please keep in mind there are far worse things than death. Hi, Noga agreed, bowing slightly and then, turning, hurried from the room, aware of just how close he had come to being M. Looking up from his paperwork, Uchiha Teka paused, a slight frown forming. Glancing at the clock, he looked back around, suddenly aware of just how late and alone he was. It felt, almost, as if something ominous was coming toward him and he truly did not like the feeling. It was probably just paranoia, ever since the Unity mess all the Uchiha on the military police had been feeling it. They had made up the bulk of the force after all and now, sadly, most had been in the fighting. Those that hadn't had been wounded bad enough to merit treatment and medical leave. Shaking it off, Teka leaned back in his chair and sighed, rubbing his eyes tiredly. Maybe he should call it a night and go home, but that would leave Anabe and Yashiro alone. There had to be at least 3 police on duty at all times, especially now with things stretched so thin. A sudden noise made him jerk upright, his nerves warning him of danger. Frowning, he eased his way around his desk and stopped in the middle of the floor. Waiting, ready for whatever it was that was threatening him. A second later he heard the noise again and this time realized it was footsteps. An even gait, someone in their late teens from the rhythm. Turning to the open doorway, he raised an eyebrow watching the shadowy figure approach. The occasional glint of light off the armor told him it was an Anbu. When the figure reached the doorway, Teka let out a breath, realizing that was just Itachi. Normally Teka found the boy unnerving, but now he felt relieved. It had just been his paranoia. Itachi-san, what brings you by? Teka asked, striding toward the younger man. I came to see who was here, Itachi said blathily, bringing Teka to a stop. Now that he was closer, he could see B flecking the boy's cheek and armor. Alarm bells went off in the older Uchiha's head, and he silently prepared for a fight. Itachi seemed completely unbothered by this prospect, instead turning away ever so slightly. Looks like you had a hard mission. It was a test, Itachi said without emotion, to judge my capacity. How about we go talk with Anabe or Yashiro? They've already misjudged their capacity, Itachi responded, prompting Teka to charge, shuriken and kunai flying at his enemy. Itachi dodged the hail of weapons easily, then casually lifted an arm to allow the last one to set off his forearm protector. Teka, however, took advantage of the distraction and closed the gap between them, a round kick whistling through the air. Itachi ducked, followed by a leg sweep, but Teka somersaulted away only to receive a kick to the stomach. Stumbling back, winded, the military police officer dodged a kick to his face only to receive one to the ribs. Moving with the force of the blow, Teka threw a hook punch, only to have his arm caught, followed by being thrown onto the top of a nearby desk. There was a loud crack as the desk gave under the weight, but Teka was already scrambling to his feet only to receive a kick to the back which sent him into the side of another desk. Spinning quickly, Teka prepared to launch his own assault, only to discover Itachi lunging for his C with his sword. Grasping a kunai, Teka parried the S and fired a straight punch at the Anbu captain's face, only to have Itachi neatly avoid it with a spin, which brought him around to Teka's now exposed back. A second later, Teka felt the sharp pain of a blade his C from behind. Looking down in disbelief, his Sharingan faded and he clutched at the B metal. A gurgle later, he slumped to the ground in a pool of B, the last sound he heard that of a cage bunchen disappearing. Uchiha Itachi stood motionlessly in the street, staring the wall and gate that separated the Uchiha district from the rest of Konoha. It had been one of the few demands they had made during the unification of Konoha. A separate district, with seals to ensure their privacy. Brilliant in its concept, and now about to turn horribly against them. Watching the 2 black flags that sported the red and white Uchiha fan symbol flutter over the gate in the early evening breeze, Itachi felt the 24 cage bunchen he had sent out dissipating. It took him a moment to sort through the information, so many faces and other minor details, but it was now confirmed. The last Uchiha within the village, besides his brother who was training, were all gathered within this district. Satisfied, he quietly passed through the gate and stopped long enough to ease it shut. The streets beyond were nearly deserted. He could see the odd person out running a few last-minute errands. For the most part, however, it struck Itachi at just how lazy they had all become. Spotting the Uchiha Senbei, he decided that would be as good a place as any to start. Moving silently, he approached the food store, eyes darting from his portly middle-aged aunt named Uchiha Yuruchi to his smiling uncle Chiaki, who was busy reading a paper. The picture-perfect middle-aged couple, they were his godparents and they adored him and Sasuke. He could remember them being so proud of him when he had graduated, bragged and given him free food. They were two of the kindest people he had ever met. That made him the most likely targets at the moment, and he felt a shot of adrenaline course through him. Oh, it's Itachi-kun, Chiaki said, looking up from his paper, his smile growing. What brings you by today? Maybe he wanted to see us, dear, Yuruchi said, her kind face filling with a loving smile. Itachi paused, staring at both, and it was Chiaki that realized something was wrong. The old man had been a strong ninja in his day after all. He had even formed a single seal by the time Itachi reacted. There was a spray of B as Itachi drew his sword and plunged it through the man's sea. Then before Yuruchi's scream could gain pitch, she too the sword now separating her head from her shoulders. Pausing, Itachi briefly tried to revolve his eyes, but found them still stunted. Frowning, he sought out more of his relatives, then snapped out of his search as he felt someone trying to kick him. Itachi twisted, effortlessly blocking and throwing two of his own punches. The Uchiha in question ducked one, blocked the other only to have Itachi kick him in the face. Spinning quickly from the momentum, the sword whistled around to the man in half. Coming to a stop, Itachi hurled his free hand up and out, another Uchiha making a break for it with a kunai. There was a beat, then Itachi was moving again as more Uchiha poured out into the street to face him. Blade downward, Itachi see off one's hand at the elbow. Then twirling the blade he gutted another, and in the same motion, another's T. Sheathing the sword smoothly, Itachi ducked a punch, twisted aside from a kick, and then grabbed the wrist of a punch aimed for his stomach. A second later the Anbu captain's home a kunai to his attacker's T, causing the man to gurgle before he collapsed. Itachi, however, did not remain standing still. He was already on the move, a kunai C down one attacking family member after another. The jutsu were not far behind, and in the sheer chaos of the battle Itachi felt mounting frustration as each attempt at evolving his Sharingan was met with failure. Still, Uchiha Itachi would not stop until he had the Mangekyo Sharingan. The training field was quiet, save for the soft rustle of the grass amid the breeze. Overhead, the cloud-spotted sky was a mixture of light and dark blues, signaling the onset of twilight. It would be a perfect night for romance, or for animals to roam. At least until, with a roar, Uzumaki Naruto darted across the training field with a ball of concentrated chakra between his hands. A moment later, the ball into the targeted tree, followed by the soft sound of grinding wood. Then, with a backlash of chakra, Naruto was sent tumbling backwards end over end. Coming to a rest, the blonde remained in a heap, breathing heavily. Sweat was beading on the sides of his face, but he was more interested in the swirl he had created. Damn it, Naruto muttered, pushing himself painfully to his feet, his right hand trembling. He didn't understand why he couldn't get this final step, no matter how hard he tried. Non-stop effort had so far yielded nothing. After all of that training, and now this, he still couldn't maintain that damn ball. As a matter of fact, the only thing he had managed to get in the last few days was his revenge for his team not telling him about being his promotion to Chunin. Naruto couldn't help but grin as he remembered that, dyeing all of Ino's clothes orange along with replacing everything she owned with identical orange items had been tricky, but well worth the effort. As had dyeing Shino's hair orange while he slept, which was no easy feat with all those bugs of his. The only prank he could say wasn't worth the effort was the one he had pulled on Anko. She had deserved it more than the others. Anko should have been, above anyone else, the one to tell him. With this in mind, he had came up with a very special prank for her. He had wrapped a large gauge wire around the prong of her TV's power cord, so that when she plugged it in she received a shock. Sadly, Anko had become livid after that and was now actively seeking to his tea. He briefly concentrated on his surroundings, to ensure that Anko wasn't sneaking up on him, then, holding his left hand out, began creating another Rasengan. Hand trembling from the concentration of chakra, Naruto gritted his teeth and, using both hands to maintain the shape, shot forward once more. At the last moment before impact, Naruto released one of his hands and drove it forward. His arm jarred from the impact, but he still pushed, rewarded as the Rasengan began to bite deep into the wood. Then, With a flash of chakra, it exploded, leaving a deeper spiral in the bark, and Naruto fell on his back. Breathing heavily, he couldn't help but wince as he stared up at the darkening sky. Kami, why couldn't he get this? Studying the crescent moon and listening to the faint noise of the village, Naruto drifted for a moment. Closing his open hands, he sighed, concentrating on the noise from the village. He could still remember the feeling of joy that had flooded through him when he had discovered shop owners and normal villagers acknowledging him. Not as something to reject, or to yell at, but as something to praise. He was more aware of the girls some his age, some younger, all staring at him as if he was Sasuke. He was careful, however, to remember that they only liked him now because of his status, but he still played up to them. But he couldn't forget the feeling, he was respected now. Not just by a few people, but by an entire village. That moment had been like something out of a dream that had turned sour quickly as he realized that many of the villagers saw him as more than a hero. Some had said his name in religious awe, as if he was the great reincarnation of the Yondaime. He had been crowded by a large group of them, pressing in, trying to touch him as if they believed he could bless them. They had treated him as if he was an avatar of the Kami and not Naruto. He had quickly escaped, overwhelmed and frightened. That hadn't been respect. Those villagers had been worshipping him. They had latched onto him in some insane view that he was something from heaven. That had been the last thing he had ever wanted, and, no matter what, he was determined never to let those type of people near him again. With a grunt, Naruto rolled himself over and then pushed himself back to his feet. Legs trembling, he panted and looked at the tree he had been practicing on. It was identical to so many others, each bearing the swirling pattern of an uncontrolled Rasengan. He felt anger building within him. Holding his hand out once more, Naruto began concentrating chakra and striking at it to form the sphere of power. He let it build, almost to the point that he couldn't stand it, and then, grasping it with both hands, roared, darting forward. Driving his right hand forward, he released the ball from his left and the ball of chakra into the tree. Pushing, straining, he drove it deep into the tree trunk. A moment later, chips of bark striking his cheeks, with a loud cracking noise, Naruto tumbled forward as the tree exploded. Falling face first to the ground, Naruto winced from the pain in his arm even as he felt slivers of wood rain down on him. Using his left arm, the one that didn't feel like jello, he pushed himself over to stare at the tree. He couldn't help but start laughing at what he found. There was only half a tree left, the bottom half, the rest of it had been destroyed. Yeah. Naruto muttered excitedly and then closed his eyes, mind and body giving out. Sasuke felt his body protest as he moved, but he didn't have the luxury of waiting. He had been training for nearly a full month, non-stop. Despite his determination, even he knew that when you received word from the Hokage's office that you were ordered to return home to resume missions, you did so. Still, he had stayed as late as he dared, squeezing in a few more hours of training. As a result, his mind was exhausted, and he was pretty sure his chakra was dangerously low. Plus, the mysterious mark on his N which he had received in the second exam and had been instantly sealed by his clan during the month-long training period was twinging slightly. Still, he felt that he had improved. Not enough to beat Itachi, but definitely enough to beat Naruto. Entering the village proper, he felt the expected hostile gazes from the few that noticed him. Like a true Uchiha, however, he ignored them. Seeing a pink curtain briefly reminded him of Sakura, and he wondered, vaguely, if he should apologize. He felt a flare of annoyance, but tempered it with the knowledge that she did have some right to one. As Kunoichi went, she was excellent, and while there might have been prettier girls he could date, she alone was truly devoted to him. To an Uchiha, devotion and loyalty were prized above almost everything else. Putting such petty musings aside, he spotted the entrance to his family's district, then paused as the wind shifted, carrying the familiar scent of bee toward him. Stomach twisting, Sasuke broke into a run before skidding to a stop, staring in mute horror at the scene before him. The street was littered with bee, twisted into unnatural shapes and surrounded by pools of bee. Horror and hate consuming him, his eyes swirled into the distinctive Sharingan. Eyes darting from shadow to shadow for signs of the attackers, he discovered more bee. Children and women, people who could have never developed or passed along the Sharingan. Even pets. Sasuke felt himself retch as he realized the implications of this moment, all these be and no sound of combat. Kami, the silencing seals that surrounded the district had kept the Anbu or other ninja from noticing the M. He reeled at the knowledge, but he could think of no one who could do this. He stumbled away from the entrance, knowing he needed to alert someone. Anyone, whoever, whatever, could wipe out his entire clan had to be dangerous beyond words. Eyes widening, a new fear clutched at his tea and heart, and he darted into the district, heedless of the danger. Rounding one corner after another, barreling down yet another street filled with B. Each passing moment drove him faster, making him more frantic. His dad, his mom, Itachi, they could all be S, and it spurred him to move even faster. 3 streets later, the sealed bite on his end sending sharp pains through him, Sasuke came to a halt before his home. Throwing open the wooden doors, he shot through the garden, jumping the reflection lake, and the wooden doors to the entrance room of his home open. Panting, Sasuke darted across the room and tore through the rice paper doors. Running blindly along the inner veranda, he knew he couldn't stop, couldn't slow down as long as his family was in danger. Seeing his parents' room come into view, he redoubled his speed. Mother, father, Sasuke, don't come in, his mother shouted, which only spurred the boy faster before he slid to a halt and the door open. Sasuke's Sharingan memorized every inch of that moment, from his mother's and father's faces, to the bee, to how they looked like broken dolls. Even the hint of his father's despair and his mother's fear. Part of Sasuke shattered at that moment, even as the image was forever engraved in his memory. Then he saw Itachi standing over their bee, gazing down at them blankly, a bee sword in hand. Sasuke, feeling more numb than should have been possible, hesitantly stepped into the room. What did you do? At his words, Itachi looked up, Sharingan activated. Sasuke just barely saw the shuriken, just barely managed to avoid the attack. Foolish little brother, Itachi breathed, eyes closing. Sasuke shifted his weight, wondering almost hopefully if Itachi was calling him a fool for assuming he could do this to their parents. A moment later, Itachi's eyes snapped open to reveal a Sharingan with a black swirl in the shape of a 3-sided throwing star. The Mangekyo Sharingan, Sasuke realized dimly before his mind shattered. Gyaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaa danced before him. As I expected, you are my child, his father said, before the image of Itachi's him flashed before his eyes. There was his mother's smiling face. Your father, when he talks to me, it is only about you. Then she, too, was in a spray of B, before a set of eyes without remorse. We are unique brothers, Itachi was saying before his other's memories intruded, each relaying the brutal death of his entire clan. One by one, Sasuke witnessed and experienced the pain of his clan's deaths. Moment by moment, his mind was brutally raped and assaulted by his brother's genjutsu. Until, at last, the tea came to an end, leaving him on the ground, crying and sobbing, a broken and ruined wreck of an Uchiha. Why? Sasuke curling into a ball. Why? To test my capacity, Itachi said emotionlessly, and because they betrayed the true Uchiha purpose. To test, Sasuke repeated, even as anger blossomed inside him. Everyone, too. Just to test. It was essential. Damn you, Sasuke shouted, lunging up and forward, attempting to mold the chakra for a Chidori. Instead, his body was racked by crippling pain, and he collapsed to the floor inches from the bee of his parents. Clutching at his withering in agony, he stared hatefully up at the monster that was his brother. This is as far as you can go, Itachi said indifferently. As you are, you can gain nothing. Without hate, you are forever stunted. Foolish brother, know that the only reason you remain is because of your wish to surpass me. For that, I will let you live. I hate you, Sasuke managed in a strangled hiss. At the main temple of the Nakano Shrine, on the far right side, under the 7th tatami mat is the clan's secret meeting place, Itachi said, his compassionless eyes never leaving him. You'll find what purpose the dojutsu of the Uchiha clan originally served. Hate me and survive. Awaken the same eye as mine, prove your loyalty. Sasuke forced his body to move despite the blinding pain, his anger and hate great enough to overcome it. Grasping his brother's ankle, Sasuke looked up, wincing, to find Itachi staring down at him unmoved. Sasuke struggled to pull himself up, but Itachi allowed his Mangekyo Sharingan to enter into his mind once more. For the next 24 hours, Itachi's voice intoned as the memory of Itachi's their parents filled his mind. You will relive this night. Uchiha Sasuke screamed like the damned soul he was. Itachi felt his pursuers closing in, gaining ground steadily. He wasn't surprised, really. After all, you couldn't expect to kill an entire clan of combat experts within the heart of the strongest hidden village and not have pursuers. The only thing that surprised him was just how long they had taken in responding to the disturbance. Those silencing seals of his clans had truly been powerful. A minute later, he felt 3 of the signatures pull ahead of the others and close in. It didn't take long for 2 to reach his sides, forming a triangle. Standard formation, Anbu, then. This might prove more trying than he had originally expected, if they weren't trainees, at least. But they would be, since trainees were regularly put into patrols within the walls of Konoha, especially now. The one on his left broke cover first, a sword drawn. Itachi caught the arm, broke it in 3 places and then shoved the sword through the man's sea, all without breaking stride. Bastard! The one on the right shouted, and Itachi launched a kunai, barely glancing, but knowing his aim was true. The sound of a body falling to the ground from a high distance reaffirmed this. A minute later, he registered the high-speed travel of a Shunshin and moved to the right, avoiding the attack. The last trainee rebounded with a curse and came back at him, throwing shuriken. He was keeping his distance, however not entirely a bad plan, in Itachi's estimation. Locking eyes with the man, Itachi activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and, with a hoarse cry, the man was consumed in black flames. Itachi, however, was not so distracted that he didn't feel a new group of attackers coming at him from ahead. Word was spreading, apparently. A Shunshin of his own brought him in range of his new enemies, a duck allowed him to avoid AS, and then a quick flick drove a kunai through the man's T. The second attacker was taken care of by a standard fire jutsu, and the final one by a chidori to the face. Body dropping, he continued onward. The Mangekyo Sharingan was beyond his wildest dreams. He could tell what someone was going to do 20 moves before they had finished the first move. His genjutsu was stronger, his fire hotter. Reflecting back on all he had to endure to achieve it, he wondered at the price. He had nearly his whole clan, his own soul out, just for this power. A price he would gladly pay again if he needed was pulled from his reflection by the feeling of something wet on his cheek. Reaching up, he felt the liquid, then checked it under the moonlight. Black. He realized he was crying B. Apparently the Mangekyo had another price to pay besides the S of the thing you care for the most. Still, it didn't change the fact that if he had to pay the price with even more lives, he would. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.